always being better than what I was yesterday.
When you're ambitious in life, you're proud of everything you achieve, whether it's small or big. Stay optimistic. Always think tomorrow is going to be better than today. If you think you can predict what's going to happen tomorrow, you've already lost the game. Welcome to another podcast with I Am Rami. I'm here with Geoff. Geoff is from Dr. Donuts. Geoff, how you going, mate?
Good, thank you.
Geoff, mate, we're going to find out about donuts today, I guess, and I want to know about your business more importantly, but I'm sure we'll talk about donuts too.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the game for?
So I guess donut-wise, Dr. Doe Donuts, we've been around for 7 years.
Yeah.
Started it, it was just a side thing in some ways because we were originally opening a cafe.
Yeah.
So the thought process for ourselves was, you could bring someone else's product in and, sell it for a very, very small margin as an add-on, or we could actually try and create something ourselves. So we didn't have any background in pastry or baking or anything like that, but just, let our sort of creativity and marketing and everything else behind, that we've had previously behind us, and
you just wanted to start a business. You didn't care what it was.
Well, the original thought coming out of the corporate world was sort of it was probably the hot trend or the big trend in some ways is everyone wants to open a cafe, right? And that was my wife's goal and ambition, and that was the original plan. But
your wife worked at Macca's as well, correct?
Yeah, so we're both there for just over 20 years.
Yeah,
started from flipping burgers. In the kitchen, like every sort of teenager does.
Yeah.
It's a part-time job. And then, worked our way through management and then into the corporate office in Melbourne. And then our final roles were we got moved up to Sydney. Myself as an ops manager looking after 38 stores in Sydney.
Yeah.
And my wife in a cafe operations role nationally.
Wow, so you achieved a bit at Macca's. That's pretty cool, man. Like, I've got a similar story. I think you know that, yeah?
Yes.
I don't know if, So my wife and I at Pizza Hut, we didn't go up the ranks of corporate, so the whole corporate thing is still a bit of a mystery to me. So that's good, man. So you started in Sydney Macca's, yeah?
Melbourne.
Melbourne. So you're Melbourne-based originally.
Yeah, Melbourne-based, but been living in Sydney for the last, 8 years?
Yeah.
And we love it. It's our forever home now.
Okay, beautiful. And I was going to say, do you remember the first donut you made? I'm interested. Like the very first donut, was it at home? Was it? And the donut that's focused for the business, not.
Yeah. So, the donut, our first one for the business.
No, the first one you tested. You know how you do like a test.
Yeah, I think it was just those basic things. You roll something out, you throw it in the oven or throw it in the fryer.
Yeah.
And we still have those. Those pictures of what we first made.
And was it at home or?
Yeah, and it was at home.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it's one of those nostalgic things. Like our favourite donut is called the 90s Kid. So all our flavours originally were based around nostalgia for ourselves.
Yeah.
And growing up in the 80s and 90s. So the 90s Kid is a pink donut with Nerds candy on it.
Okay.
And people may think, don't know about that taste, but on that taste profile, but the sweet and the sourness, to us is perfect.
And who's into the product development? Is that you or is that your wife?
That's my wife.
That's your wife, yeah?
I'm sort of more the more ops side.
Yeah.
Operations side and focus, and I'm not allowed to touch the donut design.
Yeah.
Or necessarily the design of anything that goes out through social or anything like that.
So you're just a numbers man.
Yeah.
Numbers,
man,
operations,
and I think myself on the other side, it's more that the long-term strategy of the business.
For people who aren't in business, I guess, like when we say numbers and operations, like how often would you look at your numbers? Is it a daily thing you track? Is it a weekly?
Daily, weekly, hourly,
minutely.
Yeah. And I think it's just that thing good, bad, whatever, you become obsessed.
Yeah.
With that, and that's your bread and butter in so many ways. But I think coming from a corporate background, very much around scoreboards and dashboards and all those things, that's what I've grown up with.
Yeah.
But it's also as well what I now try and pass on to my people as well.
Yeah.
That's what's actually happening, because we're a 24/7 business.
And you've grown it to a $12 million business now?
Yeah, we're in 8 figures.
That's a lot of numbers. Yeah, that's a lot of numbers, man.
It's a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
And it's something we never necessarily thought we'd get it to.
Yeah.
From that, and we definitely grew substantially through lockdown and through COVID, as opposed to a lot of necessarily in other businesses. And we're very fortunate. But,
And when you say you didn't think you'd get to that, and a lot of entrepreneurs that start off somewhere and there's no way they ever think they're going to get, to the numbers they get to. What do you think was like the pinnacle, the point where things started, where you started realizing, hey, this is going to be bigger than what I thought?
Our goal was always to act like a big business and do everything 100% the right way. And we did that from the start, and that might have been through our marketing material, our socials, and all those other ops procedures you have, might have been food safety and everything else. Everything was always, for us, had to be the right way.
Yep.
And for that, I think there's a lot of sacrifice we had to make because we constantly reinvested in the business. But through doing that, when over whatever happened over the last few years, we already had those things in place, and we have had to work bloody hard, to keep that momentum going. Yeah. But we had the groundwork.
I think the big lesson is similar to my journey. I guess that's what we started from day one. Whatever we did, it had to be systemized. It had to be scalable. Yeah. It didn't matter. That came ahead of profit, and I'm guessing it's the same for you guys. 100%. Ahead of profit, ahead of everything. Things must look good. It's as if you were impressing a boss, if you like. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah, I think it's those things of we've always envisioned that we would be a big business, and you never know who's going to knock on the door and want to buy your business, help you expand it, help promote it, whatever the case. So we've always wanted to, live up to that standard. Yeah. But it has, come with.
And I'm just trying to visualize now how you make the donuts. Is it a bit of a factory sort of thing? Is it a bit of a production?
Yeah, production. So our guys every day start from 1 a.m, if not earlier. Yeah. Because we will deliver from as early as 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. If it's a corporate or a parent or whatever that may need those donuts even earlier, we'll make that happen for them. Yep. So it is very much, just a production facility on one side.
I'm just fascinated. What part of your business is sort of retail, if you like? Or
so zero retail.
Totally retail?
Online.
All online, but how much of it goes on to be sold into retail and how much of it goes straight to the final consumer?
Zero. So...
Oh, you can only buy it, so it's going straight to the final consumer.
So we don't wholesale to anyone.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that we know, there can be off days, whatever, where there's waste at the end of the day. Yeah. We know if somebody was paying a wholesale price for that, cafe or restaurant owner, likelihood is, and even in the conditions right now, is that they could not afford to throw that away. And they would try and sell it the next day or the next day after that. Okay. Again, for us, it was always about keeping that quality standard. Yeah. And we get calls and emails, daily.
And you're 100% e-commerce business?
Yeah, 100% e-commerce.
That's it?
Yeah.
Wow, so people just jump online and they order for their birthday party, for their
birthday party, any occasion.
Yeah.
Might be last week was, year 12 graduations.
Yeah.
Birthdays are a big one for us. But the good thing, which we never thought with donuts, was, you buy them to celebrate a new child's birth. You buy it for the first birthday. All along the birthdays. Yeah. Engagements. Weddings.
Did you anticipate that, or was that like...
That was not in our mindset, but that's how it sort of ended up. We've never thought that you'd order them for a gender reveal or a birth of a baby all the way through to, the 60th, 70th, 80th, 90th birthday. Yeah. Or on the other side as well, that I think, generally when someone may pass away, the normal go-to is flowers. But on the other side, the family actually, or the children family would actually need a pick-me-up. Yeah. And something positive. So that's why people also send donuts as well.
So what I'm hearing is you've sort of gone in with a business concept, business idea. You've got your corporate sort of understanding. You sort of understand what goes on at Macca's. And then you've allowed the business to sort of drive you. You've allowed the business to lead the way. You've allowed the consumer to tell you whatever they want, we'll go.
Yeah. We've listened to the customer. Yeah. And we constantly do, and we take on that feedback. But and we do get things wrong, and we'll backtrack a little bit. But that's how we've constantly evolved. It's just by watching, the trends that are happening out there. And I think more than ever, as a business person right now, it's can be very hard in some ways to pick trends or look back on previous data to actually, see when your busier periods are going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we've done.
So 8 years into the business, do you think it's harder running the business today or day one?
I'm doing just as many hours as we did day one.
Yeah.
We're doing right now.
But what was easier today, or physically, mentally, everything? What do you think, honestly?
Well, I think it's when those first few years, you're, running on that energy and the adrenaline and that excitement, and the sales, the profit, whatever, is probably not there, but you've got that dream and everything else in mind, and that's what you're working to. Whereas now it's just a totally different kettle of fish. There's a lot greater sales, but there's a lot greater responsibility.
Yeah. And do you enjoy today more than what you enjoyed it back then, or?
Exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Yeah, I think we're very, very proud and happy about what we've created.
Yeah.
But we know there's so much more to it as well.
Yeah. Speaking of the we, how do you keep the fine line between the relationship and the business partner?
I think it's not for everyone at all.
Yeah.
So even we opened Melbourne 6 months ago now.
Mm.
So part of that was splitting the key people and the resources. So I've actually been living in Melbourne for the last 6 months.
Yep.
Been up a couple of times. So basically we've lived apart for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And we've done a bit of a swap for a few weeks, but I'll go back there and do another 6 months, and hopefully by then the business will be where it needs to be to run itself.
And how's Melbourne going? How do you find going into a new market?
Well, we're born and bred in Melbourne, so knowing it from that, I would 100% say we thought it'd be easier.
Yeah.
I knew
it's
maybe
a challenge.
About that, and
it's
I
a
think
challenge.
the biggest difference we've found is just the difference between the two capital cities. Melbourne and Sydney are very, very different kettle of fish.
Yeah. You know what I say? I say don't even look at them. I say if you're looking at expanding interstate, don't even look at them don't think of it as a state. Think of it as you're going to go international. You're going to go to a whole new market. I mean, when they say whole new market, believe me, it's a new market, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
right.
you've experienced that firsthand now.
Yeah.
It's like, what? But this works in Sydney. How come it doesn't work in Melbourne? And it doesn't, correct? Yeah.
And that's the thing, and you've got to be prepared for the worst necessarily. And we know why a lot of our competitors, or the majority of them, haven't opened in two states. Because one, it's resources that you're splitting, but the other one is the financial cost of taking on that challenge.
Yeah.
And you've got to be prepared to wait it out and grow it and get it to the point, and stay positive about it.
So how do you feel? Look, I'll get a small read into your business. There's no question that your profit is going up, but I'm sure going into Victoria, it's put a bit of a damper on it.
Yeah.
How you finding it? Like, how do you handle that challenge? How do you handle the challenge of all of a sudden, you're not profitable, or you're not as much profit. You're growing, but profits are dropping.
Yeah.
What happens then? How do you handle that?
It's a hard one. Definitely hard. I think, in some ways you don't become oblivious to the numbers necessarily, but you have to be in some ways. Like we've got a CFO that handles the numbers, but we're well across it. But if you weren't and you couldn't see the future and the where it's going to be, you wouldn't sleep at night.
Yeah, because so many people quit. I know so many people once they go into state, they say, "Hang on, no, I'm going to go back to my box. I'm going to go back to what I understand best," because then their dream is not, what I mean, far ahead.
And that's the thing. I know, and openly talk to my staff and our people around. It'll cost us at least $500,000 before we turn a profit in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing in a lot of ways. But we know it's for the right reasons, 100%.
Now, I want you to be honest with me. Is it a bit like when you first started, you didn't know how hard it was going to hit the bottom line going to Melbourne?
Oh, I think we thought from day one, stupidly in some ways, that we would, jump out of the box and do very similar numbers to Sydney.
Yeah. But that's your success, right? Because you're optimistic about everything. That's why you have the business that you have.
That's right.
That's why you and your partner have the business you have.
From the day one when you start and you're doing every role and the dollars are slowly trickling in and it's optimism that you got to have.
100%. You know, there isn't like similar to your story. You know, you've gone to Victoria. I've done the same. I've gone to Queensland. I've gone ACT. You know, I was in Singapore 2 weeks ago, and I'm thinking, yep, there's a Riche's that could go there, and there's one that could go there, and I even called the landlord. You know, you know, because you're always optimistic, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's consistent with entrepreneurs, and you have to be, otherwise you just stop.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But I think on the other side, it's maybe there's two sides of it. It's being a successful entrepreneur versus, you know, an entrepreneur. Is kind of how I see it as well. And being successful does take, you know, sacrifices, harder work than you've ever done before.
Yeah.
You know, your sleepless nights, just everything.
I don't know. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to go on a wild card here on a bit of a. Do you think you're a fraud? Do you stop and think I'm a fraud? Like I don't deserve all this. It's a bit of a, how did I cheat the system? How did I not cheat the system? But how the hell am I here? I never thought I was that good.
Yeah. And a lot of times right now, in some ways, we pinch ourselves because you know, we get to work with the companies and the brands and collaborations that we never thought of, or we can have someone from the PR side that we never thought we'd be able to work with. But then I think back, and yes, a lot of the times it does make me a little bit emotional, because for the first 3 years, we lived, you know, in a 10 by 10 room above our cafe. The cafe kitchen was our kitchen. The bathroom was whatever was there.
Yeah.
We sold our cars. Every single dollar went into the business and growing it the right way. And, you know, we didn't pay ourselves a salary till, I don't know, 15 months ago.
Yeah.
From that, because that was the goal, and what we wanted to. So, yeah, as much as pinch ourselves of where we've got to and where we want to be, we know 100% the sacrifices we put
Mate,
in.
you give me goosebumps, because that's exactly my journey. I'm sure you've heard it again. You sell your car, you live in a small room, you don't care. You're the last person to get paid. You're the last person to go and buy a new jumper. I remember one of my staff members buying a car, and I'm like, and he was the guy that just started working for me, and I'm like, he's got money to buy a car. I still don't. And this was 3 or 4 years in. And, you know, and I guess most people would think this is a time where I should quit and go and get a job just like that person. But when you have a dream, like what you guys do, you don't quit, do you?
No, that's right. And it's still those times when you look at it and you go, oh, you know, new employee. For me, I go there, I'm paying him more than I pay myself.
Yeah.
But it's those people that I need in my business, and that's the reason we do it.
Yeah.
And that's why you get up every day and you just go again, right?
Absolutely. That's your passion. That's your dream.
Yeah.
You got any questions for me? Because any questions for me that you want to know?
No, I think, you know, listening to you on podcasts and reading about yourself, I think love the one from the franchise side as well, and reading about, you know, the franchisor or the franchisee needs to be in the business.
Yep.
Which I think is great, because from so many other businesses, it's, you know, write the check, have a franchise, and the person isn't there. So I think being in the business is key.
Yeah.
I think as you know, and great to hear that as well, that you're extremely hands-on. And I'm sure everybody tells you don't need to be.
Yeah.
But for us as well, it's when your name is on the door, until, you know, the day we sell it one day or whatever happens with it, we will be there and we'll be just as passionate about it. And when time comes where you have to be hands-on, which I think nearly everyone in hospitality right now has to be, you just do it. You roll up the sleeves and you do it.
Mate, you know, when COVID come around, how was that? How did you, like, I know you guys were sort of, you scaled up instead of scaling down.
To begin, we thought potentially here we'll lose it all.
For how long? Like COVID, like in the news come around. I remember the news come around. It was a Monday when the Prime Minister said we're going to lockdown. Were you still were you still thinking this is it?
The very first one.
Yeah.
We still had our cafe. We agreed to all of our staff. We sat them down and we basically said, how many hours a week do you need? Because a lot of them were international students and obviously didn't get any support. How many hours do you need a week just to get by and to stay here? And we said, no matter what happens, you know, whether we have to sell something else, do whatever, we'll do that for you. And I think that definitely held us in good stead, you know, from that. And then, but in the meantime, we kept putting in, you know, the extra investment, all those things. And when the second lockdown happened, sort of last year, was when we actually had the people.
Yep.
Which was hugely beneficial. But we'd also put in a little more groundwork, which allowed us to really expand.
Yeah, there you go.
And grow. Yeah.
Mate, going back to your structure, so you mentioned you've got a CFO.
Yep.
You got a CEO, or one of you guys handle that?
One of ourselves. Yep.
Yeah. So 2 CEOs, really.
Yeah.
Joint venture.
Yeah.
Joint. So you got a CEO, you got a CFO.
We've got our customer service team.
Yeah.
And then we've got our managers in both states.
Yeah.
And our staff.
And you guys, there's no franchising system that you're looking at, no nothing. So you want to have it all corporate. So which means you sell everything.
Yeah.
There's never. Would you consider franchising or?
Biggest thing with franchising from working at McDonald's, I worked for sort of 6, 7, 8 years on the franchise side with Macca's, was how do you do it at that level? If we were to ever do it, I would want to do it at that standard and that level. And I guess similar to yourself, when I see you on socials or whatever in the stores, talking with customers, being hands-on, working with your crew and your staff members, that's what I would want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether we could do it at that level.
Yeah.
But for now, I think as well, we kind of like having the control over everything. Well, and similarly how you've got control in some ways around your food production and all that, you need to be able to do it at that scale.
Yeah. And do you outsource your deliveries, or do you have your own delivery vans, or?
We have a few of our own delivery vans.
Yeah.
We use a logistics partner.
Yep.
But it's not for us where we will just say we use this courier system, go and speak to them if the delivery is wrong or incorrect. We own it.
Yeah.
So our customer service team are basically also logistics managers. So they will sit there. Everything is mapped where the customer will know within that minute that it's going to be delivered. So we will constantly look on them in the mapping in both states around where our cars are on the road, where they're headed next. Have they taken the right photo for the customer? The customer may call and need it rerouted to a different address. All those things. I say 50% of our business is bloody logistics.
Yeah, and learning about logistics, right? So you didn't have that at Macca's, I know that.
No, I did actually. I started McDonald's delivery 7 years ago in Melbourne, so I had a bit of a knowledge around that.
Yeah.
But if you don't know about logistics, it's very hard to start from scratch.
Like you would have learned logistics. You've learned all the stuff. And I know you knew about financials from McDonald's, for example, but financials would have more or less been given to you.
Yeah.
Here you had to go in there and work it out yourself and work out a system to how to track your financials, correct?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Yeah, and did you do that on your own at the start, or?
A little bit from the start, but again, we have always had bookkeepers and accountants, and now the list goes on, as you know, to make sure up to standard. But we always kept an eye on that, and that's because through our McDonald's upbringing, it is about the numbers. So we're always abreast of that, but from a bookkeeping and all that side, we've always sort of outsourced that because we'd rather spend our time on the marketing, the design, the logistics, and getting donuts and gifts to customers than sitting there worrying about processing receipts and other things in the system.
Now, you on Channel 7, correct?
Yes.
Channel, you were interviewed on Channel 7?
On Koshi's Business Builders.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you sort of hinted on something. You said you went down the line of, you got to watch out for scammers and people who sort of... Where were you heading? What were you trying to say there?
I think for a lot of things, we learnt our lessons very early in the first couple of years, which I think has held us in good stead for where we are now. But we've had people walk into the business and, offer to buy it and place down check. Well, I can say we've dealt with some of the biggest scammers in Australia. Yeah. From that point of view.
Join the club, mate. Yeah. Join the club. Even from day one, I had people come into the cafe and they'd offer me money and throw money at me and write checks. And anyway, I got dodged so many ways. But it's interesting, isn't it?
And you learn from the dodgy tradesperson or sign writer that ripped you off and disappeared. Or, I think learning those things very early and still getting by and still having a business is great in a lot of ways because if it was to happen now, there'd be a lot greater financial loss.
Yeah.
Or
And the
it'd be something
scammers are still around. I've got to
Oh,
warn
yeah.
you, they're still around. There's all those people. That's the way they do business, and you got to be careful. And I've got to be honest, man. If I don't get scammed once a year, it's probably not a good year, as they say, man. So
Yeah, but you become so much more wary of these things.
yeah. I'll recall a story now. Where, the very first thing, right, that we called into the business to build our first riches was a carpenter, and he took off. He got 50%. He did a couple of walls. He hit a couple of nails, and then that's it. And then he said, "I'll be back tomorrow at 7:00 in the morning." I remember I rocked up at 7:00 in the morning, and the guy wasn't there. Called his number. He didn't answer. What are you going to do?
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, mate, there's plenty of them. So that's interesting and that's something else that people don't realize when they go into business, right? They have all this business plan. This is what we're going to do. There's nowhere on there that you'll have a line for scammers, do you?
Oh, it's just whatever you want to call it, scammers, contingency, whatever,
Yeah.
Even when you go and build a new restaurant and, it's always over in some
Absolutely.
ways. And you've always got to be able to allow for it. And when you're small, those things really do hurt.
Yeah.
I know from so many businesses where they say, well, it's just a feat to get open. Or when I opened, I couldn't even afford the napkins. Well, if that's the case, how are you going to get through the first few years?
Yeah.
Because it's those things of the, $10,000 piece of equipment breaking, or you didn't allow for your GST bill, or all those things. Those are the ones that'll really, really hurt you.
Yeah.
And we never borrowed from friends or family or anything like that because, my thought is that 9 times out of 10, it just never gets repaid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now, look, I'm sure you make a lot of sacrifices, right? I'm guessing your business is weekend focused, correct?
Yeah.
You're missing out on weddings, you're missing out on parties, you're missing out.
So one was, I guess, living in Sydney, where all our family and friends are in Melbourne. We're originally from. But we haven't had a holiday in 7 years.
Yeah.
Ourselves. You miss weddings, our nieces growing up, our mums are in Melbourne. You miss all those things, and I think, I don't know, you've really got to be able to be prepared to make the ultimate sacrifices.
Yeah, but you love it, I'm sure, man.
Love it.
It's what, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and the thing is now is hope, and what I say is, where we're at, hopefully, is that we can help look after our mums and our families and our nieces and nephews and all that. That's just as much a part of it now for us. That's what the goal always was.
Yeah.
But we had to make those sacrifices to get there.
Can I ask you, why did you choose Melbourne, not Queensland, not Brisbane? Is it because you lived at Melbourne, or?
Yeah, know it well, we believe.
Yeah.
It's just that second biggest city in Australia.
Yeah.
And our thing was always just based on population. And then obviously the population growth that's expected for Melbourne to bypass Sydney in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
Which I can ultimately see as well, which will happen. It was just a numbers game.
Yeah.
From us. And that's the same thing of being an online business it's just site visits, that we need, because we know we convert a very good percentage of those customers straight away.
And what's the next 5 years look like?
Well, the next 5 years, next goal is Brisbane, through that, and then it's I think looking necessarily overseas.
Maybe ACT before Brisbane?
Maybe.
I don't know, man. just maybe. I don't know. ACT is a very strong market.
Yeah.
It's very strong because, especially just listening to you quickly, what you're saying about what your customers are and how they behave. There's all those functions going on ACT, and if you hit, our ACT business is great.
Yeah.
So make sure you keep an eye on that.
And then one of our biggest clients is corporates.
Yeah.
And that is because I think coming from a corporate background, we know how to deal with them and what they want and at what level it needs to be at. So that's, a very big portion of our business.
How often do you study competition? How often do you look at your competitors?
Competitors and anything happening in the business world.
Yeah.
Just constantly.
Yeah.
Because I think it's, I just want to be abreast of everything that's happening out there, because it might just be that one snippet might be real estate or some other industry that's going to impact us. Or there's an idea that I can have that we can put in our project line that may expand the business.
So if I'm hearing correctly, you don't look for ideas just from your industry. You look from
everywhere.
E-commerce is your competition. Would that be correct?
E-commerce in general.
Yeah.
But just trying to keep abreast of everything in the world, because I think everything in some way relates back to your business, big or small.
And how do you switch off?
We do.
I think I know that. You do switch off?
Do switch off,
okay.
But it's very hard to.
Yeah.
When you got your own business, it's your passion, it's your life. I think unless you're really, really prepared, having your own business or being an entrepreneur is not for everyone at all, because you'll have people around me, you need to take another holiday, you're working too hard, why are you working weekends? You got to be prepared to take that on, because you've got an ultimate goal.
You know how I switch off? I switch off by accident. Honestly, I don't I can't say, next weekend I'm going to have it off and that's it. I'm going to turn the phone off, because it never works that way. So for me, it just be like, I just come back from Brisbane this week, and all of a sudden I'm playing with my kids, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden it's like, hey, I've had 4 hours where I've thought about nothing except, hang out with the kids. So it's always an accident for me, man. I don't know. Is it a bit similar to you sort of thing?
Yeah,
or?
I think one is for ourselves, myself and my wife, Christy, it's about exercise as well. So I think that maintains the stress levels in some ways, and, releases that, or that's something I always plan to do every single day. Is some form
you're
of
a
exercise.
champion, man. Some advice. Tell me, how do I get off my chair? How do I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning?
It's always been something for ourselves, but it's, in some mornings, or a lot of the mornings, we're in there at 1 or 2 in the morning with the team.
Yeah.
Just making sure everything's right and doing quality checks. And even at the moment, just because, that the labour and the staffing can be so on and off, we're in there helping them. And then it is always maybe 4 or 5 in the morning off to the gym and spend, whether it's 20 minutes or whether it's a good 45 minutes or an hour. I think it's just something for me that I need every day, just to release that.
Mate, it's amazing. Like, I'd love to, mate, and I do, and I get into like my, I'll get into, what do you call it? Like, I get into periods where I'll go every day, and then once you drop off for a couple of weeks, and it's so hard to get back into it, man. I've been off now for about 4 months, and I feel the difference. Like, I don't feel myself. I don't feel as energetic. I don't feel as focused. It changes. It changes your mindset completely. So hopefully one thing I'll get out of this chat is me heading back to the gym, mate.
You just got to find that time. I think it's, whether it's, might only be 20 minutes today, or for myself as well, it's sort of incorporating that into, well, what have I got at home that I can use for 20 minutes, or I don't know, in the office. Make it easier for you as well, and so that you don't have those excuses of, it's going to take me an hour because I've got to drive to the gym and do this and do that. I know, find 20 minutes just to jump on a bike. And you can still, if you need to, read your emails, do whatever, but there's that form of exercise in the background.
Absolutely. And now the world has opened up, so we're sort of getting back to normality. Is that put a different kind of strain on your business, or is it still gradually growing the same way?
Yeah, still growing at good numbers.
Yeah.
I think for myself, it's more, what I find is just the trends. Like, yourself, it's probably anything going to the CBD, there's only a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. And we know that from our numbers of deliveries actually going there.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to, whether it's school holidays, whether it's whatever, we know people are travelling more. Does that mean the school holidays have even more impact on our sales? It's just, historically, this right now doesn't always seem to be the case.
Yeah, the world is changing and business is changing.
Yeah.
Like, I know even for us now, you got, order at table and all these sort of things, and you don't want to do it because you have your core values, and one of our core values, for example, is that we want to give that extra service. But when all your competition is doing it and they're able to bring down their labour rate, you start thinking, oh my God, at what point does that going to break me, or what point is it going to push me to table ordering, you know? So yeah, you're right, absolutely, man. Like, the things, how the world is changing, the business is changing.
And it's and it's those things as well where sometimes you've just got to let the customer dictate what they want. But there's actually a benefit for you as well.
When you roll out, I just want to touch on one more thing before we go. But So this is for my own sake as well. So when you roll out a new product, when you're rolling out a new flavour,
Yep.
all that, are you doing it Melbourne, Victoria? Are you doing it Melbourne and in Sydney at the moment, or are you just
Yep. Everything we do,
yeah?
like the business doesn't matter whether you are ordering for either state from wherever,
Yeah.
you get exactly the same thing in both states.
Mate,
and it's that thing, it's just exactly the same as your business. It's about that consistency
Yeah.
because that brand name should not matter where you are.
You're so committed to your business and to your customers, I guess, more importantly. I could hear it, mate. I could hear the love and the drive you have, and I'm sure it's just going to grow and you're going to keep on growing, mate. I don't know where you're going to end up. Are you overseas soon or what?
We'd love to do overseas.
Yeah.
That's our sort of pipe
Pipe dream, yeah.
or in the next few years.
Yeah.
All the other one is Australia big enough? Is that enough for us? And
Yeah.
on the other side, then does it become along the product line of not just donuts and cookies, which we do, and gifting, or can we introduce other dough products? Can we put something in the supermarkets? Do we license it off to one of the big guys in Australia?
Amazing, mate.
We're constantly looking at all those options as well.
Maybe we can go overseas together.
Yeah, would love to.
All right, Geoff, thanks for joining me today, mate.
All right.
I've had a good chat.
All right, thank
Cheers,
you.
buddy. Thank you.